The book I'm reviewing today is Minigolf Paradiso by Alexandra Tobor. It's unlike the other books I've reviewed so far. It's originally written in German, and as far as I know, it hasn't come out in English yet, but I hope it will, and once it does, you will very much enjoy it. A little blurb of the contents of the story. The book is about Malina, who is a 16-year-old girl. She came to Germany from Poland with her parents when she was a very small child. Her family isn't proud of her the Polish heritage and try to hush it and not talk about it. But then Malina finds out that her grandfather, Alois Dudek, who was said to be dead, is actually very much alive. And she uses her summer vacation, where her parents are away. She uses that time to track down her grandfather, and she eventually finds him, and a road movie starts, more or less, because Alois Dudek is in debt with the wrong people. First criterion, main character, and as always in first-person narratives, I only count the first-person character as main character, which, yes. And Malina, I like Malina. I like her a lot, and I don't have any migratory background. I'm from Germany. My family has lived here for several generations. My grandparents are German, my great-grandparents. So I have no background in common with her in that regard, but I know what it feels like to be an outsider and to not fit in, to be rejected, and to be skeptical of the people around me and the culture and everything. So there I have a point of contact. We have something in common there. And Malina is very funny. So Alexandra Tobor's humor is very visible in Malina and her. It's just very fun. The problem is, and that's something that can be seen throughout the book and throughout all the aspects of the book, is that Malina is static. And that's surprising because we have a road novel here, and everything moves. People are on the move, people are on a search, are trying to change their world and find out things. But all in all, and Malina is an active character. She takes steps to make things happen. And but the main changes that happen are outside of her. Her relationship to someone changes a bit. The image she has of someone, her opinion of people changes a bit over the novel, but we don't see much deep reflection. And to me, it feels like Malina was supposed to be a deep contemplative character, but it's just not really shown. So we get to know her on a conversational level, but not on a deep emotional level. It's not just skin deep, it goes a bit deeper, but it doesn't go really deep. She doesn't really bare her soul in front of us. And she remains static. We have this beautiful image of her established, and it's a beautiful image. It's funny, it's interesting, it's nice. I like her perspective, but it stays the way it is, and there's not much change. So the score I'm giving in the first category, main character, is 7 points. That's not a bad score, but yeah, I've just missed a dynamic character and real depth, real reflection. Second criterion, side characters. The biggest side character is Alois, and he is someone you encounter, and that's a problem with the first person narrator, because the first person is the only person you get actual insight into and actual reflection of their inner life. But you can show development from the outside. And with Alois, it's the staticism. Is that a word? The staticness is very visible in him, and I know if you read the book, you might frown now and wrinkle your forehead and wonder why, because in the beginning of the story he doesn't want to get in touch with his past, and in the end, well, there's the end and he's in touch with his past, and that looks like a big change. But the thing is that he was just waiting for an opportunity, for an occasion to get into this, and it's his development. What looks like development is basically him taking some old boxes out of the cellar and wiping the dust off. So we learn that he had this wish to do what he does in the end of the story. For a long time, he just didn't dare, and this daring to do it is the only change that happens. So in the story, nothing grows. There are no new little plants that come out of the dirt and that weren't visible there, that weren't there at all. It's just old boxes that get dusted off. Malina's mother is a character I like a lot, and her interaction with Malina is just it's great. There's life in there, there's dynamics in there, and all the things I miss about the rest of the story. It's something I feel very often, is that authors have characters act in a way they think that characters in a novel should act. And how people act in a novel is different from how people act in real life. And this always annoys me, because it's predictable. It follows a set schematic. And with Alexandra, I feel like she didn't have this idea in the back of her head while she wrote it, and I don't know if that's the case. There's a podcast episode where Holgi from Vrindheit, I think I don't know the English words, Ortgespräch oder Ferngespräch, one of these, where Holgi interviews Alexandra, and I haven't heard that episode yet. I wanted to go about the reading and this review fresh and in I guess it's hermeneutics, when you only see the document and don't care about the context. That's the way I wanted to go about this. I will listen to this episode when I've done this review, and if I have any new insights, if I learn anything, I might record an appendix to this and tell you about it. So I don't know if Malina's mother is modeled after someone Alexandra knows in real life, but she feels very, very, very real and very yeah, and I like that a lot. The other characters, especially those that come into the story after, beginning with chapter 21, they are just functional characters, and especially with Malina's grandmother Rosa, it made me very sad, because there's this change in perspective. Initially, Malina has an image of her grandmother. There's on her grandmother and grandfather, and there's the story her mother told her. And then Alois talks about his past a bit and explains a bit, and so her image of her grandmother changes. And so I had hoped that she would spend a lot of time with her grandmother, at least as much as she spent with her grandfather, in terms of scenes and chapters and pages, and gets to know her and establish kind of a relationship. She just has kind of a relationship with her grandfather, but kind of a relationship with her grandmother. And that we get even more perspective, just an additional perspective. But Rosa is just a placeholder. There's this trope of the magical Negro, the black man who enters the story and gives some piece of wisdom to the hero so that he can get his life back on track. And Rosa has this function in the story, and she just says some wisdom stuff, and the same goes for Malina's cousin. He's just wisdom, and that's basically it in terms of relationship and meaning for the story. If I were objective, I would give this. In this category, I would give 5 points, so a neutral scoring. But I can't get over how great Malina's mother is written. And also, Alois is he lives in a kind of a fantasy world. He has this whole elaborate story about his past made up, and it's very fantastical. And writing delusions is very hard, and writing dreams is very hard, because we have so many models of dreams in the media, and of what we have this cultural image of what delusions look like and what confabulation looks like, and so it's hard to distance yourself from that and write realistic delusions. That's kind of a tautology, or what is it? Dry rain. And it's a contradiction in itself, seems to be. But realistic delusions, writing them, it's hard, and I think Alexandra did a really good job here. And so this is why I give 7 points for the side characters, which is a really good rating. And yeah, even though it's static, the static image is beautiful. And yeah. Third criterion, relationships. And I already mentioned it here and there, but there aren't really relationships that are being developed. There's the plot it's just brushed over, it's skipped over more mostly, and yeah, people mean something to Malina, and she has an image of them, and that changes, but there's no closeness. And yes, Malina doesn't really want that much closeness with her grandfather, and Alois doesn't really want that much closeness either. But it's just, closeness happens. If you're stuck in a car for several days, closeness just happens. And there's there's an exchange on an emotional level, but in the story it's mostly exchange of information, and they do verhandeln, negotiate their needs and wants and all this, but they don't get time to rub off on each other and to shape each other, and the relationships are also only superficially reflected by Malina, and that's just because they don't get any time. And I really wish that the story wouldn't have started by, okay, Alice and Malina meet and then poof, they're on the road trip the next day. I really wish they would have had 2 or 3 weeks time to just establish rapport and to get to know each other a little and to develop something before they go on this road trip. And then that which they have established changes over the road trip. And the same with Rosa. They don't get time. I wish this book, it's 254 pages. I wish it were 454 or just plain 500 pages. That would have, I would have loved that. Yeah, and so here I actually managed to give a low score in spite of my great liking I feel for this book, because it's just so devoid of relationships that actually exist and grow and change. Criterion 4, conflicts. And as you can imagine, since conflicts result from relationships and there aren't many relationships in the story, there isn't much conflict in the story. And the main conflict, Malina's not knowing about her heritage, about where she comes from, it's established, and it's a deep conflict. It's an important conflict. It's about identity, and it's tough enough to be someone who moved to a different country, had to move to a different country. Or was forced to move to a different country because the parents wanted to move, who has the identity of the past and then trying to build a new identity in the new country and getting this together, two cultures, and it's tough, it's hard work. But not knowing where you come from and not knowing that one part of your identity, I guess that's even tougher, because if you know something, you can deal with it. If you don't know something, not knowing something, you can just you have to bear it. You have to just have it, hold it, and live in spite of it. The finale, the solution in the end, it was painful, and especially since it's not really shown. It just happened. It's brushed over, and then it has happened, and we get a little flashback, kind of, not really flashback, but it's told looking back, and yeah, because the conflict is so important and so deep, and it is established rather well. I found it interesting. I wanted to know more, and it's established well, and because of that, for conflicts I give 4 points instead of just 3, because it's established so well. And yeah, but I wish there were more conflicts and they were deep and developed, but since there aren't any relationships really, there isn't much conflict. Criterion 5, world building. it was very nice. I got images, and Alexandra Tobor's language it's colorful, it's funny. There are many ideas and creativity go into her language, and so it was very entertaining to read this book. And I already mentioned it, but Alois' Dream World, which I also count as world building. Main side characters are world building, and everything is kind of world building. But this Dream World was very cool, and I had a lot of fun. And yeah, I got images. I had an idea of where they were, what things looked like, what they felt like. And so, yeah, for world building, I give a full 10 points. Criterion 6, choreography. Since we have a first-person narrator here, there's not much to choreograph, so there aren't things happening in different places at the same time. We had no flashbacks. Everything was just linearly told, and it happened all very quickly. The scenes could have been longer, could have been more intense, more in depth. But that's more conflict relationships, characters, so I don't want to price that into the points I give for choreography. And since there wasn't much to do, I give neutral 5 points. Language, I already mentioned that Alexandra's language is very colorful and full of images, and it's not overly done, it's not stuffed, it's fun, and there are many cultural references to the 90s in Germany, and I was already conscious in the 90s, so there's some nostalgia there and recognition. And yeah, it's a talkative style that she has. Malina has a talkative way of narrating. But it wasn't this super crass stuff like Eminem rapping into your ear that I dislike so much and that I find so oppressive. It was fun. I had a lot of fun. It was nice, good. Just 10 points for language. Criterion 8, personal touch. I already mentioned the humor that's in the book, and the characters, they have their own way of speaking, their idioms, so their personal slang, in a way, and that was very, very fun, and also Wieder weiß ich nicht, was... Again, I don't know what Menschenbild is in English. I should have looked it up. I'm going to look it up right now. Okay. Leo.org says that Menschenbild means idea of man, which is rather sexist. So I'm gonna say idea of humanity, which is, why not? So the idea of humanity that's portrayed and transported in this novel feels a lot like it's the authentic, personal idea of humanity of Alexandra Tobor, and what could be more personal, touchy than putting your own view on humanity into a novel. And it all rang true to me and jived, and so I give another juicy 10 points. Oxygen. Give me oxygen. Criterion 9, DNF, didn't finish. I finished the book, but I wish I had stopped reading after chapter 20. That's because after chapter 20, the whole spewing of wisdom starts, and this whole last part of the story should have been much longer, and it just feels like the author wants to finish the story, be done with it, and she takes a lot of shortcuts and just tells a lot of stuff instead of showing it. And yeah, since I finished the book, but wish I hadn't finished the book, there are 0 points in Criterion 9, DNF. Criterion 10, fun. I had a lot of fun with this book, except for in the last part. So I give 8 points for Criterion 10, fun. So, the final score of Minigolf Paradiso by Alexandra Tobor is 64 points. That's basically 6.5 out of 10. And yeah, the story drove home the point, it's a road movie, novel, so drove home the point that a story there can be so much plot happening and so much movement outside of the characters. If there's not much moving inside the characters, and if there are new things sprouting up inside the characters, in their psychology, in their mind, then the story will still feel static and still feel like it doesn't move. And I recommend this book, at least the first 20 chapters, without hesitation. And without reservation, I recommend it as an entertaining read, something fun you can read. I wish it would have been more in depth. There would have been more deeper looks inside the psychology and all the conflict relationship stuff. And maybe it wouldn't have been as funny, but I'm pretty sure that Alexandra Tobor is capable of writing deep and contemplative stuff in a very funny way and narrate it in a very funny way. And so, yeah, that's this review. You can comment if you have any comments. You can subscribe and you can give thumbs up for this video if you want to. That's something you can do, and we'll meet again soon enough. Ciao.